Welcome to the Cross Counsel Podcast. We believe negative emotions shouldn't run your life. We invite you to take a deep dive into this challenging transformational journey that goes far beyond this podcast. Join Executive Director and expert facilitator Steve Freitag and me, Jon Crevillian, as we discuss how to deeply experience the love and truth of Jesus. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Cross Counsel Podcast. I, of course, am your host, Jon Crevillian, and I am joined with my co-host here, Steve Freitag. How are you, Steve?
I'm going to unmute for a second here while the car alarm blows in the background. So I'm good. Bye.
Okay, good, great. Someone has not attended their car in some minutes since before the recording started here, and the alarm is continuing. So, we'll be praying for Steve in the meantime here. We are also joined by the panel again, just like last week. We've got Lucy Galvez with us again. How's it going, Lucy?
Pretty good.
Right on, right on. Lucy was telling us a little bit about how she got rid of her birds, or rather, they found a new home. And that's not a euphemism. They are still alive, but they found a new home.
They were rehomed.
They were rehomed. It led to some, while you had them, it led to some funny moments during like staff meetings and that sort of thing, where you just hear something, just a really quick little in the background.
Yeah. It was funny for you, not for me.
Yeah. It's funny until you live with it.
Yeah, it was kind of like, you know what, I'm over it. These things gotta go.
They gotta go outside where they can be loud all the time.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And we're also joined today by our other guests from last week, Jenni and Brynn Freitag. How are you guys?
We're good. No car alarms here, no birds. It's pretty quiet at our house.
Awesome. Very good stuff. Well, today we are going to be continuing on our conversation about Pixar movies. And I just thought of something, and I don't know why I didn't bring it up before, because it's a core memory of like Pixar stuff. I once brought a girl. I didn't know what it was about, but I brought a girl to a Pixar movie as like a first date thing, and it was Up. And Up has a tough first 5 minutes. And like I was like barely holding it together. She was full on in tears, and she like turned to me and she's like, "Why would you take me to this?" And I'm like, I didn't know. I didn't think I'd be confronted with mortality this fast. They usually build up to it in Pixar movies.
Wow.
Happy. One day you'll die. Like, I was like,
Paul prays in Ephesians 3 that we would be rooted and established in love. Love that surpasses knowledge, so that we may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. At Cross Counsel, it's miraculous to watch people transform by the love and truth of Jesus. But some people need a little extra help. We never turn anyone away because of their inability to cover their session fees. Would you be willing to cover that cost for somebody who is looking for freedom from something in their life? We are inviting you to be a part of what Cross Counsel is doing here. Would you be willing to donate to cover someone? Bless them, though you've never met them. You can do that today at crosscounsel.com.
But we are going to be talking about the second Inside Out movie today, Inside Out 2. And it was a lot of fun. I think we'll just jump right into it. You know, people who heard us last week know what we're going to be kind of talking about, so we might as well jump into it. But the second one is a lot of fun, and it continues with the same characters as the first one. If you haven't seen it, this is a pretty new movie still, so spoiler warning. It is here. It is now. If you want to go see it and you don't want us to spoil it, we'll see you when we see you. But now's the time, because from here on out, spoilers. But now that we have that out of the way, the second movie continues to follow the main character from the first movie, the young girl named Riley, as she becomes a teenager, and she starts to deal with things like puberty, going to high school, that sort of thing. And along with puberty, along with that age, comes a bunch of new emotions. The big ones being embarrassment, anxiety, envy, and boredom, but boredom goes by like a French name, right?
Ennui. Yeah.
Ennui.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful.
So great.
Yeah, no,
I think that
and
translates. It's French,
go ahead.
right? It's
Yeah.
it's French for "I'm just too cool for everybody else."
Yeah,
Must
true.
be. Right. It sounds very
Ennui.
French.
Yeah, it's like that emotion's like depicted as like an emo kid. So I'm like, word, that one's cool.
Right.
I would hang.
Yeah.
I would hang.
Mhm.
But yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. And just kind of dealing with more emotions and essentially how anxiety kind of gains too much control over the rest of who Riley is and how that kind of dominates her person for a time. And it also brings up some interesting ideas of like even more kind of complicated introspective ideas like a sense of self, which is depicted by memories that are mixed with emotions that kind of visually they like create a strand that becomes part of like this weaved amalgamation that makes up the personality of this character. And when the little emotion characters will like pluck the string, you'll hear kind of like the belief in that moment, in that sense of self. Like they'll pluck a string and it'll be Riley's voice saying, "I am a good person," or "I am a good friend," or "sometimes I hurt other people," that sort of thing. Yeah, it's really good. It's awesome. Lucy actually was talking about it at a meeting recently and was very excited, which, prompted me and my girl to go see it. And we thought it was great. But yeah, Lucy, tell us a little bit about your experience, I guess, just to kick it off.
Well, like I had mentioned last week, for a long time I lived in sadness and anger. Those were the two characters that I resonated with. And the second part, it was anxiety all the way. Like I lived off, like anxiety ran my life for many years. So, um, anxiety was, it just kind of makes you. I think sometimes you're just busy. Like for me, it was anxiety. So I'm like constantly moving. I got to do this. I got to do that. I'm busy over here. I'm busy over there, and never sitting for a second. So then somebody would be like, "Hey, you got to sit," and I'm like, "Why? Like why do we
Is
need to
this a trick?
sit?" Yeah, like what are you trying to do to me? Like I can't do it. So my favorite part in that movie is when I think it was Joy that's like, anxiety, you got to let her go. Like that was like,
Mm.
oh my goodness, I almost started shouting. I was like, man, I felt like I was at church for a moment. Like, yes, amen. Let me go. But yeah, it was, I don't know, that character just, she was crazy. And yeah, I I I could see, like, I think a lot of people deal with anxiety. And even my daughter just kind of looked at me and she's like, that's how my brain feels sometimes. You know, like
Oh,
my
open
daughter's
that
7.
conversation up.
Yeah, like my daughter's 7. So, and just recently was, vulnerable moment here. She was recently diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety.
Mm.
So, she just kind of looked over at me and she's like, Mom, I feel like that sometimes. So that was kind of like, it was a lot of things happening in that theater. I was like, what is
Wow.
this? Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. What did you guys think of it? Jenni, Brynn, any thoughts?
I don't, it's funny. I don't know that I would say I didn't dislike the movie, but I wouldn't say I was like relaxed watching it. It wasn't the sense of anxiety, and I think they portrayed it really well in the movie because I
Mm.
felt anxious watching it as a viewer. Because all you want to do is tell this girl like you're gonna be okay, and um, I just think that was really hard to watch because how Pixar is so Disney Pixar, they're so gifted at portraying characters that you empathize with, and I think I just like I empathized with the character and just kind of wanted to intervene and um, share the love of Jesus with her because obviously that is not a part of the movie. and tell her that she doesn't have to live with anxiety, which is what, kind of like you said, Lucy, your favorite part at the end, like you have to let her go. But even in the end, it was an interesting, not that we have to jump to the resolution right away, but it almost seemed like that was the solution, is all of these emotions are now just a part of you, and it's a part of your personality that you would have anxiety, envy, or all these emotions. So I would be curious to talk more about that as we get further into the discussion.
For sure.
Yeah. So is your question whether those emotions have a place? Like that anxiety has a useful place in our.
Right. Does it?
Yeah.
Does it have a, should it stay? Is it part of our personality?
Is it something we would want to embrace
Mm-hmm.
because it serves a purpose?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Great question. Steve?
To be done with it. And they're not actually suffering with a disorder, but maybe there's other things that we could do for them that would steer their attention in the right way, that they're actually more capable of paying attention to certain things than, we just need to, as adults, take some responsibility of what have we done? What have we created on our side? And what have they actually picked up from us as well? Dr. Smith with Transform Prayer Ministry, he said, and maybe I've shared this story before, but they were on a family trip and they were driving, it might have been near the Grand Canyon, and he was having such a great time looking out the window, seeing how amazing it was to just see all the scenery. And then he looks at his mom, and his mom is freaking out. She's like grabbing the door, just about ready to, put her fingerprints or her handprints into the door permanently. And he goes, "Oh, I guess I'm not okay. I guess I'm not safe." And from that moment on, he was terrified of heights. So it was actually a learned fear. So how much are kids learning from us as parents or adults? Those things that we haven't gotten resolved inside of us. So I bristle, to be honest. It's some of the criteria that is used in those diagnoses. It's probably just a convenient label given to children that are maybe even more active or pay less attention to other things around them. So, yeah, I don't know how far down the the wormhole I want to go when it comes to like just even how pharmaceuticals have driven so much of this as well. And that we're just trying to control behaviors instead of dealing with heart issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beliefs are it's so important for us to deal with the beliefs. So I think there's more that we can do for our kids that actually help them grow and mature and normalize some of the things that are just part of the developmental process and cognitive development. So I don't even know. Yeah, I'll have to listen to that in post. But
Sure.
Yeah, no,
as
I agree with you, Steve. I had to tell my daughter, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. The doctor can tell you that you have ADHD, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with you. You are fine. Like, you're just smart. Because my daughter is very, very smart. She will sit and have a conversation. She can have a full blown conversation with you about something. The thing is, it needs to get her attention.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, like, example, she can sit and talk to you about the stars and the sun and the solar system and all the galaxies for an hour, and dinosaurs.
Awesome.
She
Yeah.
remembers things about dinosaurs, and I'm like, what? And we've had the conversations of, did dinosaurs ever really exist? She's 7. Like, so her mind is so, it's so quick, and she's so smart. And so I tell her, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with you, and anxiety, no, you don't have a place. You don't have a place here. So we've had that conversation. And what we've done is just, I told the doctor, we're not doing medication. I don't want medication. We coping skills, sure, let's get a routine down. And so that's what we've been doing, just kind of a routine. Let's stay productive. Let's learn something new. What interests you? So but it's at nighttime when it's in the stillness that she cannot be still.
Mm.
When it's like, okay, it's time to, settle down, she can't. And so that's the way she explained to me was, Mom, that's how I feel sometimes, and I'm like, okay. So it helped me to see how she's feeling, because sometimes I'm like, okay, sit down, like, stop moving, why are you moving so much, like, stop it. But she helped me to understand. By watching that, I was like, okay, I get it. I get it now.
Mm.
But I agree, Steve. I think it's something. They want to, some emotions need a name. But I don't think that every single thing out there needs to. It's ADHD or it's ADD or oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. Like, I don't think so. So I do agree with you 100% on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Hillary, who's been on the podcast before, we were actually having a family discussion, and she said, I don't think I'm not ADD, I'm not ADHD anymore. I think with what God's done, those things are resolving themselves because of the truth and the love that is becoming more rooted and established in our heart. So I think that's what's important. I would push back too, as a parent. I don't think it's a great message just to say there's nothing wrong with you. There's plenty wrong with us. Okay. But there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong about where, like, development. There's nothing inherently wrong, right?
Mhm.
Fundamentally, and however you talk to a 7-year-old, right? But I,
Right.
I I think there's plenty wrong with us. I think that's why we need Jesus. That's why
Yeah.
we need to take a look at what needs to be transformed in our lives, what needs to be renewed in our minds, what needs to be filled in our hearts. So yeah, so that's just a cautionary thing that I would encourage you and all the listeners to be a little bit more precise with that statement. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Because yeah, it can set us up for then, well, there's nothing wrong with me, then I can do whatever I want. So I mean, we're planting seeds in those young kids' hearts. So to have that um, defined a little bit more. But I'm dominating a little bit. So if anyone else has any thoughts on that.
No, that's oh the gosh, that's all good. So, what do you think within our conversation around this movie too, and emotions in general? And
Mm-hmm.
we talk about kids. Obviously, this one is the focus on hitting puberty and what emotions are prevalent and come forward. But Lucy, even as you talk about,
Mm-hmm.
the range of kids in general, or the differences between a 7-year-old and a 13-year-old, for example, the reality of how do we talk to our kids about emotion, or for you, even Lucy, as an adult now, like figuring out, oh, that's what I'm feeling, giving words to emotions that are happening. And I wonder to what extent, I mean, again, we're not experts. Um, in the child development scale of things, we're trying to help them understand what's going on, what's happening for us when honestly, so much of the human condition, what happens in our minds when we finally slow down, when we're laying in bed and we're no longer busy throughout the day and things are finally silent, what stirs in us, what keeps us from being able to fall asleep, what anxiety
Mhm.
is spinning, just like we saw in the movie, and the crazy frenzy that we saw of that character. But for us as humans,
Mm-hmm.
what do we do with all of that? Like, where is that supposed to land?
Yeah, so I think you could take a movie like that and a character like anxiety from Inside Out too, and say, and when a child identifies with that, I think you celebrate that. Oh, you see that? Okay, honey, that's part of growing up, and mom and dad are here, or mom's here, or whatever parent or caretaker. We're gonna walk you through that. You're gonna be
Mhm.
okay. It's gonna be okay as we walk through this, and we just see what needs to happen in your heart, and that to reinforce that idea of joy, return to joy. And I think that genuine joy is different than, okay, I'm just going to teach my kids the way that I handled things. I'm just going to suppress things. That's the problem, is that we can so easily teach our kids to just not worry about it. That was said to me, just ignore them. That was the
Mhm.
phrase that rings in my mind as a child. Like, when you were teased, when you were bullied, just ignore them. Okay, well, I pretended really hard just to ignore them, but it didn't do any good in my heart.
Mhm.
Well, and actually, that ties back to the movie pretty well because, like, in
Mm-hmm.
the start of Inside Out 2, we see the character Joy, we see her taking core memories that aren't happy and just throwing them to the literal back of the mind. Like, she doesn't at all process them. They don't have a place
Mm-hmm.
in building that sense of self that I talked about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Joy says, nope. we're not
Yeah.
doing that. This is not who
Right.
we are. We're just going to not think about that, and just
Mhm.
throws it somewhere.
Mhm.
And by the end
Mhm.
of the movie, she has to deal with kind of the buildup of those core memories that have not been processed yet. And that was such a
Exactly.
really good depiction, I think, of, I mean, like something I've experienced of just like burying emotions to the
Mhm.
point where I forget they're there sometimes, or like these memories that have affected me, that have not been allowed to be processed into the rest of who I am, and how much I was suffering because of that. So I thought they handled that really well, and they actually depicted that in a really accessible way again in this movie.
Mhm.
Mm.
So yeah, I thought Inside Out 2 got a lot right. I really do. Like, just hitting on things that made a lot of sense. And, you know, by the end of that movie, I think it's a pretty good depiction of, in a sense, of like what we do here at Cross Council, where like those memories that were like bottled up and hidden away, they had to come out. They had to come to like the forefront of the mind, and they had to be processed in a healthy way, but they helped to make Riley, this character, into a more complete person, because it's processing like, yes, sometimes I do hurt people, but I'm a good friend and I apologize. And this is a bad memory from this time, but it taught me this, like that sort of thing.
Mhm.
And I think that that's super important, and that's pretty. I like that a lot. I honestly, I think a lot of that is what we do. So.
Yeah, much of the analysis is really good. Like
Mm.
the ultimate answer to true healing, of course, that's not going to be in a Pixar movie.
No, no.
But I think it's great. Yeah, to the way that they depicted that, I would agree. There's so much to be taken from that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And those steps, those
Mm-hmm.
difficult choices. Okay. And we all want to believe we're a good person.
Mm.
But even that is a conclusion that I'm a good person or I'm a bad person. Well, there's there's a lot of different things that I could say about that, because when we get down to memories where there's these core beliefs, we always are looking for, we stress this all the time, we're always looking for things that can never be true. I'm a bad person. Well, sometimes I do bad things. So it can be true that there are people that make really bad choices, but I
Mm-hmm.
inherently bad? Well, then we get back to, we are all created with God's image. Well, we all have the image. The fall, I think part of that is that we've lost the likeness, but we still have the image.
Mm.
And it's coming
Okay.
back into the likeness as well as the image. Like it's there in everybody, this inherent imprint of God, the Imago Dei.
Yeah, I just wanted
At
to.
least that's the fancy.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Brynn.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on kind of like what you're saying, Steve, of these chords, so these beliefs, the I'm a good person, which obviously needs to be so nuanced and rooted in who we are in Christ, the Imago Dei. But so kind of going back to the character development as anxiety kind of becomes the front runner in Riley's mind. You see all these core beliefs about herself starting to change, and all these lies being planted. And I wrote down while I was at the movie. It's hardly, I can't even read this really, but I took some notes in the dark theater. But one of the lies that she starts to believe about herself is, um, so in the context, she's, I think, moving into high school the next year, and she wants to make this really competitive hockey team. And so there are tryouts, and so she's at the tryouts, and it's this whole like, does she stay with her old friends, or does she kind of like, uh, play nice with all the cool girls and like nuzzle her way into popularity and winning favor with all these older teammates. Um, but she's anxiety starts to plant this lie that if I'm if I'm not a firehawk, so if I'm not on this hockey team, I'm going to be alone, or I'm going to be not liked, and all these things that, like, I'm sure I've had in ministry and sessions of thinking like, no one's going to like me if I don't perform well. If I don't do this, then I won't be accepted and I'm going to be alone. And well, how does that feel? And I just think that was like a really pivotal point in the movie that I'd love to talk more about, because she's telling herself this lie, and it's so pervasive, and it then therefore again motivates her and launches her through anxiety to perform well, but then she's making all these poor choices, and her sense of self is diminished and it's corrupted.
Well, and all that behavior was from lie-based thinking, right? Or the possibility, or Steve, I think you refer to that as the fantasy thinking, right? Those fantasy scenarios, things that haven't happened yet, but that our mind is spinning. If I don't do this, then this will happen. Or if I don't do that, or if I, and then you end up in that cycle, that frenzy of anxious thinking, all based on nothing. None of that's happened. It's all pure speculation, but the mind is busy running 1,000 scenarios. And
they depict,
yeah, right. And we behave differently. And we certainly don't operate from points of peace, if that's what's the thinking behind however I'm acting, right? Rather than from a point of peace, it's from I'm making these decisions out of anxiety and out of all these negative possibilities that could happen, that I am afraid of having happened. Yeah.
Which really, I guess maybe you would say, Steve, is more of this fear of what could happen to us, and anxiety is like how it manifests, but it's really a deeply rooted fear. Would you say yes to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're set up for self-preservation, self-protection. And so, I mean, it's such a binary thought. If this happens, then this. And if this doesn't happen, then this. You just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. Who knows if you don't make this team or you don't get accepted here, maybe that's actually a better path. One of my men's groups, it's just funny. We've had discussions before of what if God said yes to every one of your prayers? Where would you be today? It's like, oh man, there's some things I desired and I asked God for, but if I would have gotten that, my life would seem to be a bigger mess than it is now. So it's good that we don't get everything that we want, because think back, oh my goodness, if God would have answered that prayer, if I would have gotten that job, or if I would have stayed in that relationship, if that person wouldn't have done this or this, then you see what happens. If you can just sort of imagine, if I would have been with that person, oh, what a train wreck. That would have been awful. Thank you, Lord, for not answering that prayer. So we don't even know. We see, what does Paul say? We see in a mirror dimly. Sometime we'll see face to face. But yeah, the more that we deal with those, here's the thing with fear, the way it's depicted in some ways is it's really good, as far as, I think, even with disgust or with fear or with anxiety, because it's said in the first movie with fear that it actually protects Riley, right? She's about ready to like trip over a cord, and she stops and, oh, okay, I've navigated through that. That could have been bad if I would have tripped over that, right? There would have been some damage. So we do want to avoid unnecessary danger. So it does serve a good purpose to some extent, but then yes, we start running all these different scenarios in our mind if this happens, and we don't know the future. And so that's where we get caught up with these binary things. If this happens, that's good. If it doesn't happen, that's bad. We don't know. We don't know in all cases. Of course, like if I continue to run red lights, eventually that's probably going to be pretty bad for me.
Well, and that's kind of where we left the movie. Was we saw the self-destruction of Riley as she's trying to earn a spot on this team, but the movie ends on this kind of cliffhanger, like what was really best for Riley, because they don't tell us if she makes the team or not. So it's really left to like, there is a smirk, so I guess it could be interpreted like, yes, she did make it, or was she content like, I didn't make the team, but you know what, I'm better off for it. And I have my friends and I'm not, chasing after that competitive nature that becomes her identity is in this team.
Mm-hmm. And if I can like jump back and just switch gears here for 1 second, I just thought of this as we were talking, but the depiction of like when anxiety is in control of headquarters and is kind of making the calls and kind of calling the shots with everything, and this emotion is affecting like the core being of who Riley is, like that whole like sense of self sort of thing. It's pretty similar in a sense to well, I guess let me start with this. Riley had that fear, that anxiety about, if I don't make it on the team, I am going to be alone. Like no one's going to be my friend, despite having memories throughout her life of being very sociable, having lots of friends. So why does that stick out? I think it's because there's that belief that is that like experience is fueled so much by that emotion that it ends up creating a strand that Riley defines herself as. And I think that that's pretty close to the whole idea of memory fueled by emotion leading to a lie. MEL. And until there's truth, until T is brought in there, that puts her whole system out of whack. So it's really interesting, actually, because like she does have memories of her friends and of being social, but there's so much of this unresolved emotion that is going into this one memory that it's enough to actually define her, potentially, until that gets addressed. And I think that a lot of us go through that. And I think that the melt process does a good job of kind of looking at that and helping us solve that, you know?
Yeah, I think John, just to piggyback off of that,
Mm,
that's why it's so important to not. I feel like as Christians, we believe, or many Christians may believe that, not everyone, let me just make that clear. Not
yeah.
everyone believes it, but there are so many who believe, oh, well, you have the joy of the Lord, so you should be happy all the time. But that's not reality. That's not reality. Sometimes I wake up and I don't feel well.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm tired because I had a long day, the day before, and it's not to say that, oh, I'm sad or I feel anxiety, but I'm tired.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired. My mood is maybe not, in the best. But I think that's where we feel like, oh, I always have to be happy because I have the joy of the Lord.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be like Joy in the start of the movie and
Yeah.
just yeet these emotions. I'm
Yes.
obligated to do that,
Hmm.
allegedly,
Right.
supposedly.
Yeah, and I think our other emotions are so important because it's reality. Like, to
Yeah.
me, fear brings alertness. The word tells us to be vigilant. How can I be vigilant if I'm not worried about anything? I'm just happy because everything's all jolly.
Just
It's
vibing.
right. So, like, there are certain emotions make us alert and aware to other things around us. So everything is just so important. So, I thought of that too while you were talking. Is, we're always told, like, oh, well, why do you look so sad? Or, what's wrong with you today? It's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't feel happy every single day. I don't feel happy every moment.
Yeah.
It's so I think it's important to note that. And like you were saying, the MEL, that's what I kept thinking about. MEL, there's the memory. We have the emotion. We know the lie. Where's the truth?
Mm.
Like, that's where my mind was going watching the second part of this movie. But those are my thoughts.
That's
Awesome.
good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we're doing really good on time. Do we want to just do some final thoughts at all, or is there anything?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I have any final thoughts. That was a pretty good final thought.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that works for me then.
But I don't know, Brynn,
Well,
Jenny.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I guess I would just say lastly, I just appreciate um that this wasn't like your average kids movie that Pixar puts out, and it was obviously most Pixar movies are super fluffy and fun, and they do have depth to them, but I think this one offered, it's just such a pivotal point in our society when we see so many people who struggle with anxiety. And I know a lot of people this resonated with. So I'm grateful that it's getting attention, it's getting a platform. And I would say it's just, I hope it helps teenagers at least process some of the things, the lies that they might believe. And that's, of course, where we, Cross Counsel, Christians, carriers of the faith, like we want to step in and use these tools that Pixar has brought us to kind of give a context for there is truth, and there's the hope that we have in Jesus.
Amen.
Amen.
This has been the Cross Counsel Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, share with your friends, and look for us on social media. The world will become a much better place, and Jesus will be seen in a much better light the more we are transformed by his truth and love. We'll see you next time, everybody.